Adnan Baranbo is here, and you are listening to a new episode of AVIAPRENEURS podcast. Today, we are going to discuss niche air cargo solutions with my guest who has more than 30 years of experience in the aviation industry, and particularly in the air cargo industry. Welcome, Mr. Andrew Smith.
Thank you very much, Adnan, and it's good to be with you. Very kind.
Pleasure is mine. Andrew, you're an aviapreneur from the UK, and you started your career in 1980 as an officer in the British Army, where you were dispatched to Hong Kong, Nepal, and Zimbabwe. Later, you established Avient Airline, and currently you are the director of NAS Corporation. So we're going to start with NAS Corporation, the company you started in 2012 with your wife, Miss Samantha Smith. The company specializes in providing niche aviation solutions to customers who are underserved by airlines and by brokers. You have a special focus on the polar areas. Can you please enlighten us and clarify what are these innovative aviation solutions you provide to your customers and you specialize in?
Well, the polar solutions, Adnan, started back in 1998 when we were still in Zimbabwe, and the early embryonic stages of Avient, and we had our own Illusion 76. It was there that we were approached to help remove and rescue some people who were in Antarctica. And we flew from Cape Town 6.5 hours out into the depths of Antarctica and brought back an expedition that was there. And that started a very close connection with friends working in the polar regions, and they became very close. And over the years from 1998, we supported them on a yearly basis in operations in Antarctica. Mainly, initially it was out of South Africa, and then in 2003 that changed to Chile, and operations out of Chile when they purchased Antarctic Logistics and Expeditions purchased the operation that was based there, and then grew it dramatically into and out of an area called the Ellsworth Mountains, and there was a runway they constructed there called Union Glacier, which was the successor to another runway called Patriot Hills. And we were heavily involved working with them on the development of the whole structure. And this grew through 2003 up to 2012 dramatically. And in 2012, there was a major project thrown at Antarctic Logistics, and that was to support the Argentine government because they had lost one of their major icebreaker, which supplied all the Antarctic bases. And we were tasked with sorting out and working out a method of resupply to the Argentine bases. And that included parachuting them, cargo and supplies out of the Illusion 76 to their base.
Mm-hmm. So this program started even before NAS Corporation. You started this program with Avient Airlines, which you founded in 1992 from your own home, and then you grow it to have more than 150 staff and 55 sales offices in 34 countries. So
yeah, but Avient actually started back in 1994. Mm-hmm. And that was after I had been working in Zimbabwe and working in the small charter or airline operation and throughout Southern Africa. And I left and then started Avient.
I understand. So I'm sure operating to the polar region and Antarctica is not an easy operation. Not every airline can go there. There are so many challenges and there are so many special operating environment which is involved. Can you share with us some of the challenges you have faced operating there?
Obviously, there are a vast number of challenges, but out of every challenge, there's an opportunity. But we've learnt dealing with the cold environment and where the problems lie. And actually, the problems lie in Antarctica when temperatures start to get warm. And it's like when we're operating the Northern Hemisphere and under icing conditions. And that is from about +2 to -5. And that's when it becomes very slippery and very dangerous. So what we've learned is whereas temperatures get warmer in Antarctica and approach -5, we just don't fly and operate a wheeled aircraft in the environment. We always look for colder weather, because with colder weather, you do get some friction on an ice surface. And that we found out carrying out a number of tests. And in particular, the colder it is, the more friction you get. And that is something we learned by example. And the other factor is we can't light a runway with standard lighting. Even though it's 24-hour daylight, we can't use red or blue because you lose the color. The frequency is wrong. And so in fact, it is much better to use white light to mark and demarcate runway and taxiways, etc.
I'm sure these are very valuable lessons, and you learn it the hard way from experience, as you mentioned.
Yep, indeed we did. And a lot of practice and trials.
Highly appreciate and understand this. So Avient also, besides the polar region, you also were focusing most of the operation on Africa at a time when Africa was under the radar of so many airlines. You started very early in Africa. I'm sure there were so many other challenges in Africa then. So from your experience, how was the operating environment in Africa when you started Avient?
I guess we were probably second when it comes to it, because DAS Airlines, who were the forerunner of all cargo operations in a widespread part of Africa, and they must take the tribute for all that, and Joe Roy and his team. But we came on second, and we developed in a small way, starting as we did in '94, moving fish. And this came about because we used to charter and lease in a number of 707s and DC-8s, which were the mainstream of aircraft in the early 90s. And that was to move livestock around. Zimbabwe was very heavily involved in moving ostriches and a breeding program for ostriches worldwide. And in order to do this, we had to develop southbound cargo to collect the ostriches. And those ostriches generally were going to the Far East. And so we had to develop return loads out of the Far East back to Europe to return the aircraft, or back to Africa. And this is how we developed the business. Our prime business was the moving of livestock, which was how the company developed in the first place. And as we grew on, and then in the early 2000s, the sort of matters changed and the business dynamics changed. There was less movement of livestock, less movement of ostriches, but there was a huge movement of cargo, which we saw was led by demand, and we had to fulfill the demand. And hence, after experimenting with DC-8s and 62s, we developed and then used a couple of TriStars, which was the early runner, because these were passenger aircraft, very much as you've seen in the last 2 years, these freighters, as they're called. We were doing this back in 2001, 2002 with TriStars, and it was very, very effective then in a different manner. But we then developed and purchased a DC-10, which was the forerunner for 3 others we had in the fleet in the early 2000s, and before moving on to MD-11 aircraft.
So you were specializing in very special type of cargo. From your experience, how is working in these livestock and perishables is different from the normal air cargo? There is some special situation and the requirements for moving this type of cargo, definitely.
Oh, livestock in particular. We became very attuned at how to handle livestock and worked very closely with the veterinary department of the government wildlife fund service in Zimbabwe and built a very close relationship with the vets. And that sort of gave us an added advantage because we understood the animals and how best they traveled. But we developed further. As Avient developed, we looked at general cargo, but more in particular coming southbound, those were the days of heavy investments in the oil and gas industry. So we worked out a close relationship with the oil and gas industry and were prepared to go the extra mile and put things into our DC-10s that many people would turn away because they came under the term of too difficult. These included very long outsized pipes, which were a challenge to get into the aircraft. You know, some 15 meters long, took quite a skill to get them to turn through the door. But we proved that it was entirely possible. But this was because we were customer-led.
Very interesting. So you were really one of the, you can say, one of the best users of this DC-10 aircraft. You really loved the aircraft and you believed in it.
The DC-10 was an amazing cargo aircraft, and it was shown to be incredibly versatile. It hit the right sweet spot of size, and there was nothing to beat it in the day. And of course, the big problem was, of course, fuel burns and fuel cost. And in the 2008, 2009, the last fuel crisis, it became incredibly difficult to make them pay because the amount of fuel we were burning against the cost of the movement of cargo, which is why we then looked closely and obtained MD-11s, which was the next link up. In case, of course, things have changed now. And engine development has gone on, aircraft development. But the aircraft are much more fragile than the DC-10 was. And that was the bonus, you know, it was a workhorse.
I understand. In Avient, you were also involved in both scheduled operation and ad hoc charter operation. In your experience, which one is more profitable and which one is easier to manage than the other by cargo airlines?
That's a difficult question, Adnan, because charters are easy because they're easily closed off. It's going from A to B, picking up the cargo and taking it to its destination. And you cost everything in. But the biggest opportunity comes to be in the right place at the right time to pick up opportunism cargo on the return. And so the actual development of a scheduled network assists because your name gets out throughout the world. And if you can work your charters into your main sphere of operations, you get the opportunity to actually interlink with your schedule. And so your charter becomes more viable still.
So combining both of them might be the best formula for success.
We found it was the best operation. Of course, we always were going off into areas where we weren't involved, but such as South America, the Caribbean, or even the Far East. Although we did have cargo out of the Far East into our network, if we got charters into Africa, it was the benefit for us. So
we're gonna go ask some questions about your family and your business, if you allow me. Thank you very much. So you have really involved your family in the business from early on. Samantha, your wife, she was the head of commercial and business development in Avient. And currently she is your co-director in NAS Corporation. And Nick, your son, joined the business a couple of years ago as well. So from your experience, do you recommend to the aviapreneurs to have their family working with them in their aviation business? And how it's possible for the aviapreneurs to separate the professional relationship from the personal family one?
This is a tightrope one walks all the time. Now, Samantha's been involved in Avient, or was involved with Avient, right from the moment we left Zimbabwe back in 2001, and we built the business in Europe. She hadn't been involved in the business in Zimbabwe, having been a commercial director of a commercial transport organization. But here we are now, 20 years on, and Samantha and I have worked closely together in the same business, and Nick joined us. Now, it takes a different sort of person, and you all have to accept that your personal lives, your business lives are all intertwined. So it's a difficult tightrope to walk for unless you are a very close family. And it's easily open for disagreements, of course, because those can move out of the business into personal life. And we're very lucky. We're a close family, and as such, we can happily work and sort of switch rapidly between family and the company business. And for the last 20 years, it's worked exceptionally well for us. And I think if you've got the ability to involve family, it does mean that you've got a lot more opportunities, and it allows you to bounce a lot of ideas off during family time as well as during business time. It's worked for us, but I can see it wouldn't work for a lot of people. So I wouldn't say it's a great thing to push as an aviapreneur.
So
I think it's something you have to be really careful about.
So it depends on the family. But what I noted in your family is your wife and your son, both of them has actually joined other businesses, gained experience in the professional life before joining the business. It was not just a right to join the business and a right to manage it. They are already experienced and they have proved their success. Then they joined the business.
Oh, definitely. I mean, Samantha was a major commercial director and marketing director for a public transport company moving cargo throughout Southern Africa. And she had a lot of experience in commercial sales. So really, from selling a 500 tons moved by trucks, there's not really a lot of difference of moving 500 tons moved by air. And really, a cargo aircraft is just a glorified truck, but in the air. Nick, his experience was in finance right from an early age. He had worked in Avient in his early years before he went to university, got his teeth cut in the finance side, and developed some interesting skills there, which stood us in good stead when we found things weren't always as people were telling us they were. And then he went off, worked for Royal Bank of Scotland and a European Growth Fund, and then joined us. So it's a skill set that has been developed outside that of aviation. So that is, I think, worked in their favor.
Amazing. God bless you all. Please pass them all my greetings. They are also
Thank you very much, Adnan. But of course, that's what their support. I have not been able to do this on my own. It's only with the family support that we've been able to build businesses.
Definitely. You have built great businesses indeed. Before we close, Andrew, I have a question that I ask to all the aviapreneurs I meet. What recommendations and advice do you give to the aviapreneurs listening to us today who are willing to start air cargo businesses and maybe cargo airlines?
Well, I think one should look at things and don't be blinkered. Don't say, I'm just going to set up a cargo airline and I'm just going to follow everybody else. And because that's a guaranteed way of failing. You've got to find the niche that is going to suit you, a market that is underserved, and then build on your business on that. Make it a solid foundation. There's that well-known fact, if you want to make $1 million in an airline, start with 10 million, because it's a really cutthroat business. The last 2-3 years of cargo business are not representative of what has gone on for the previous 20 years. We have been seeing the cargo business in the last 3 years where you could name your price as an operator and everybody had to accept it. No, it's definitely a hard business to be in, but it's something that is both rewarding and very challenging. And as I say, I think the key is finding a niche, finding something that somebody isn't doing, and then exploiting that and building the business around that. But don't forget, passenger business is just the same.
I think it's the same in every business. Find a niche, find underserved market, and go seize the opportunity.
Yeah, definitely, Adnan.
Thank you, Andrew. I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate all the expertise you have shared with us.
Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure. And I wish everybody all the very best.
The pleasure is mine, and the pleasure to all the audience listening to us and who joined me today in AVIAPRENEURS podcast. Thank you, everyone. See you next week with another Aviapreneur and another episode of AVIAPRENEURS podcast. Have a great day.